In this video, I'm gonna share with you the things that you do not do when selling your property with tenants in it. You cannot make these mistakes because you will easily get sued or get yourself in a boatload of trouble. Trust me, you do not want to do that. The goal is to sell for top dollar and no legal issues. My name is Daniel Hale. I'm a licensed real estate agent in Ontario, and I predominantly work with real estate investors, which means I sell a lot of properties with tenants in it. And I'm going to share with you guys the exact steps that I like to use so that you can follow them along and make sure you don't get yourself in trouble. Now, recently, I came across this article online and I saw that there's some landlords right now that are getting sued because their tenants are refusing to leave the property after the sale. So the buyers are coming after them for damages, compensation, and all sorts of stuff. That sucks, and the truth is, the landlords are likely gonna have to pay for it. I was checking this out on the Facebook group that was posted in an Ontario landlords group, and they were all saying, it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault. And I'm gonna share with you whose fault it really is. And the crazy thing is, in my opinion, it's the real estate agent's fault. And I'll tell you why. They need to know what they're going up against, what the laws are in Ontario for the landlord and tenant board and how to sell a tenanted property and how they can do that without getting the sellers in trouble and having no issues with the tenants. When you're selling a property with tenants in it, you are not just negotiating with the buyer and the seller, you are also negotiating with the tenant. They do have rights. That is their home. So let's not forget that. Get all this animosity going and anger going and just say, oh, I want you guys out, or I'm selling my property, this is how it is. That's not how Ontario works, okay? So let's get right into this. I'm gonna share with you guys the first thing you need to do. Step number one is review the leases. You need to take a look at the lease, okay? What it's gonna tell you is a lot of things, but the most important thing that it's gonna tell you is, are the tenants on a fixed term or are they on a month-to-month term? If they're on a fixed term, there's only so much you can do. If they are on a month-to-month term, there's more options for you to sell this property. We'll dive right into that a little bit later. Step number two, speak to the tenants before you put the property up for sale. This is going to save a lot of headache for all of you, the owner, the tenant, and the real estate agent. Don't just surprise them by putting a for sale sign up on the front lawn. They do deserve to know, they do deserve to have a heads up, and this is gonna help the negotiation process to make them happy, you happy, make sure everybody's happy. So first things first, let them know that you are selling the property and let them know when the property is going up for sale. You also wanna let them know what could happen. Now, because you have reviewed the lease, okay? If they're on a fixed term, you cannot evict them until their term is up. Now, when I say evict them, you still have to follow the guidelines of the Landlord and Tenant Board Act. If your buyer is moving into the property for their own personal use, you are allowed to give an N12 for a notice of eviction for the buyer's personal use. This is an intention that needs to be clear. Now, if it's an investor that's purchasing the property, you are not allowed to evict the tenants unless you come to an agreement with the tenants for cash for keys. Now, before you sign that agreement of purchase and sale and say this is done, the tenants and I have an agreement, you need to get an N11 signed, which is a notice to end the tenancy. And that agreement is amongst the tenant and amongst the landlord. Now, I just sold a property and I did cash for keys and I had the tenants sign an N11 and I had the landlord sign an N11. Now, before the purchase and sale agreement was firm and binding, I made sure that I had 3 business days conditional to get both parties to sign the agreement. In the event that it was not signed, the offer was null and void. Everybody walks away. We have no strings attached where some buyer is going to come back and sue us if we can't get it vacant. So what I did was I negotiated a cash for keys scenario for the tenant that he was happy with that could also assist him with finding a new place. And I also gave him the appropriate amount of time for the closing date to finish so the tenant can find a new home. Now, like I said, you're negotiating with the seller, the tenant, and the buyer. So in this case, when the tenant came back and he was very happy with the cash for keys scenario, he was very happy with the time he had to find a new place, everybody was happy. I had him sign the agreement. After he signed the agreement, I let the purchase and sale go firm and binding. Now, in the event that the tenant now doesn't leave, I have a purchase and sale agreement with the appropriate clauses in it to protect my client, the seller, and I have the appropriate clauses in there that state he has signed the N11. Now, if he does not leave, I do not have to wait for a landlord and tenant board hearing. However, I do have to wait a few weeks for the sheriff to arrive to take care of the matter. Now, that's okay, that's not a problem, because like I said, I have the proper clauses in the agreement that if I needed an extension of closing, I've already safely put that in there so I can avoid any issues and my seller does not get sued. Now, we're still on the step of speaking to the tenants. When I say this, the other part is when I speak to the tenants before I put the property up for sale, I also want to tell them their rights and what could happen. Now, am I being a bully? Absolutely not. Everything is above board. I tell them about the N12. I tell them about the N11, their cash for keys scenario. I tell them that the only way that they would have to leave the property is if they were served an N12 for the purpose of the buyer moving in. I tell them if it's an investor, they have the right to stay unless they want to agree to the N11 and the cash for keys scenario. So all of that being said, the tenant is now aware of everything, and I'll tell you in a little bit later on what happens when it comes to offer night. Number 3, schedule your showings. Now, when I say schedule your showings, it's gonna go live on the MLS board, and what you're going to do is you're gonna let the tenants know you will receive 24 hours notice for all of your showings. I wanna give you sufficient time so that you're aware that there's gonna be a showing here. And I also set them up on my automatic system so that when somebody books a showing online, they get a notification straight to their phone and straight to their email. That tells me that they've gotten the notice and I'm aware that they've gotten the notice. So now I know, they know that there's a showing happening and they can be prepared and everybody's happy. Step number 4, offer night. It's now offer night. The offers are all coming in on the property. Now, here's what you need to do. You need to take a look at your offers, see what you have on the table. And then what you want to do is you want to look at the top offers, and now you're going to give all of the agents a call that have the top offers. And you are simply going to ask them, what is your buyer's intention? Are they planning to move into the property? Are they an investor? And like I said, this is important for you to know for the reasons that I explained a little bit earlier. They're moving in, or they're assuming the tenants, or they're doing the cash for keys scenario. Now, understand, I have had a lot of agents lie to me. So don't believe what they say. Just whatever they do tell you is how you are going to now go back to the agreement of purchase and sale to make sure the appropriate clauses are in that agreement of purchase and sale so that you can get them to sign it. So now, even if they lied to you, it doesn't matter because what you put on the agreement of purchase and sale is going to protect you. Now, I've had landlord and tenant board hearings that I've had a scenario where the buyer has lied to me and told me they were moving in, and then I sell them the property, they renovate and resell the property, which is highly illegal. You cannot do that because you're taking somebody out of their home for a profit. So the landlord and tenant board is highly against that here in Ontario. So what happened was we went to the hearing. I simply showed the adjudicator the purchase and sale agreement where the buyer signed stating that he will be moving in for his own personal use. Now what happened? The adjudicator amended the agreement so that the purchaser is now being sued and my client is now safe. This is very important. So when you're on offer night, you want to ask the agent what is their intention. If they're an investor, you ask them, are you willing to assume the tenants? If the answer is no, but we are willing to do a cash for keys scenario, you can have the purchaser add money onto the agreement to pay the tenant if the tenant agrees. If they don't agree, You cannot sell this person the property vacant. Now, I've also had the scenario where I've had an investor send me an agreement of purchase and sale and say that the property is going to be left in a broom swept condition. Now, if that clause is there and my client signs it, guess what? My client just got sued. You cannot have it in a broom swept condition with tenants in it. The new landlord has to assume the tenants. So that being said, step number 1 on offer night, you have to find out what their intention is so that you can put the appropriate clauses in the agreement of purchase and sale to protect your client. Now, I understand some of you guys are going to think, oh, what if my tenant does not leave even after he has signed the N11? I can then call the sheriff because I've submitted it to the landlord and tenant board. I will not have to do a hearing. They will speed that process up and the sheriff will then come and take care of the matter for me. Now, that will be an extra 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, but that's okay because I do have an extension clause in there. That's very important. There are all sorts of different case scenarios, okay? And I've sold tons and tons of properties. If you need help, you have any questions, just shoot me an email, send me a text right here, give me a call. I'd be happy to help you guys solve your problems. Now, some landlords and tenants, they bump heads, don't like each other so much. So it's your job as a real estate agent, if you're a real estate agent, to make sure that you take care of this in an amicable way and you speak to them amicably. I've had tenants when I've sold the property, they don't believe a word I say, even though I've offered them X amount of dollars and I've tried to assist them and I try to help them, and it actually turns out they ended up getting an N12, leaving with 1 month's rent when I actually tried to give them more money. So here's a scenario that I've dealt with many times because I've talked to the tenants before I've sold the property. Offer comes in, let's say it's $1 million. Offer number 2 comes in at $950, okay? But the $1 million offer, that's an investor that wants the property vacant. The $950 offer is an offer with a family that wants to move in. Now, if the tenant's not on a fixed lease, he's on a month-to-month, I have the option to make that happen. If he's on a fixed lease, I don't have the option to make that happen. I have to have somebody assume the tenants. Now, in this scenario, because there's such a gap that's $50,000, I can now go back to the tenant and say to them, okay, as we discussed before I put the property up for sale, I have 2 high offers here. One of them is an investor that's asking for vacant possession. The other one is somebody that wants to move in, a family. So it's very unfortunate that I do have to sell the property today. And the truth is, it's either going to be the family that I have to give you an N12, 60 days notice, and my client owes you 1 month's rent, okay? Or it's going to be the investor, which I can give you cash for keys, $5,000, $6,000, some extra time to find a new place. So now they're thinking to themselves, okay, I'm either going to have to leave on 1 month's rent for a family moving in, or I'm either going to accept cash for keys. I'm going to put some money in my pocket. It's going to help assist me with a nice new place. I'm happy. The sellers are happy because they made more money as well. Everybody is happy. Now, when we go back to the scenario that I was talking to you guys about before, about the landlords that were getting sued because the tenants decided that they weren't going to leave and now the purchasers are suing them, this is a lot of money that they're getting sued for, all because the real estate agent made these crazy mistakes. And why I say that is I don't blame the sellers, and I'll tell you why I don't blame the sellers, because the sellers hire a professional to sell their house. They don't know the law, they don't know these things, they just want to have the property sold, right? The tenants, I do not blame the tenants, and I'll tell you why. In Ontario, the Landlord and Tenant Board Act exercises rights for the tenant, and it is their home, so we should remember that. They shouldn't have to just walk out and listen to you and, oh, I'm getting kicked out of my house that I've been in there for years. I'm sorry, guys, that's not the way it works. You have to do things above board. You have to know the law in Ontario, and you have to know how to sell the property properly? Yeah. You have to know how to properly sell the property. So again, guys, if you have any questions, comment below, shoot me an email, send me a text, give me a call. I'll be happy to help you guys. Give this video a like if it helped and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.